Hi, we're going back to the county fair. When E.B. White wrote this about 70 years ago, he based the fair on one in Blue Hill, Maine, which is still running today. This was illustrated by Garth Williams and published by Harper's. Charlotte's Web. In the cool of the evening, when shadows darkened the fairgrounds, Templeton crept from the crate and looked around. Wilbur lay asleep in the straw. Charlotte was building a web. Templeton's keen nose detected many fine smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started off. "Bring me back a word," Charlotte called after him. "I shall be writing tonight for the last time." The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as a welcome relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went round and round in the sky and seemed twice as high as by day. There were lights on the midway, and you could hear the crackle of the gambling machines and the music of the merry-go-round and the voice of the man in the Beano booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fern met her friend Henry Fussy, and he invited her to ride with him in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't cost her anything. When Mrs. Arable happened to look up to the starry sky and saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fussy and going higher and higher in the air, and saw how happy Fern looked, she just shook her head. My, Henry Fussy, think of that. Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn he found a folded newspaper. Inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch: a deviled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, part of a hard-boiled egg, and the core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in and ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, rolled it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web. At this hour no people were around the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves. "I hope you brought a good one," Charlotte said. "It is the last word I shall ever write." "Here," said Templeton, unrolling the paper. "What does it say?" asked Charlotte. "You'll have to read it for me." "It says humble," replied the rat. "Humble," said Charlotte. "Humble has two meanings. It means not proud, and it means near the ground. That's Wilbur all over. He's not proud, and he's near the ground." "Well, I hope you're satisfied," sneered the rat. "I'm not going to spend all my time fetching and carrying. I came to this fair to enjoy myself, not to deliver papers." "You've been very helpful," said Charlotte. "Run along if you want to see more of the fair." The rat grinned. "I'm going to make a night of it," he said. "The old sheep was right. This fair's a rat's paradise. What eating, what drinking, and everywhere good hiding and good hunting. Bye-bye, my humble Wilbur. Fare thee well, Charlotte, you old schemer. This'll be a night to remember in a rat's life." He vanished into the shadows. Charlotte went back to her work. It was quite dark now. In the distance fireworks began going off, rockets scattering fiery balls in the sky. By the time the Arables and the Zuckermans and Lurvy returned to the grandstand, Charlotte had finished her web. The word humble was woven neatly in the center. Nobody noticed it in the darkness. Everyone was tired and happy. Fern and Avery climbed into the truck and lay down. They pulled the Indian blanket over them. Lurvy gave Wilbur a forkful of fresh straw. Mr. Arable patted him. "Time for us to go home," he said to the pig. "See you tomorrow." The grown-ups climbed slowly into the truck, and Wilbur heard the engine start, and then heard the truck moving away at low speed. He would have felt lonely and homesick had not Charlotte been with him. He never felt lonely when she was near. In the distance he could still hear the music of the merry-go-round. As he was dropping off to sleep, he spoke to Charlotte. "Sing me that song again, about the dung and the dark," he begged. "Not tonight," she said in a low voice. "I'm too tired." Her voice didn't seem to come from her web. "Where are you?" asked Wilbur. "I can't see you. Are you in your web?" "I'm back here," she answered, "up in this back corner." "Why aren't you on your web?" asked Wilbur. "You almost never leave your web." "I left it tonight," she said. Wilbur closed his eyes. "Charlotte," he asked after a while, "do you really think Zuckerman will let me live, and not kill me when the cold weather comes? Do you really think so?" "Of course," said Charlotte. "You're a famous pig, and you are a good pig. Tomorrow you will probably win a prize. The whole world will hear about you. Zuckerman will be proud and happy to own such a pig. You have nothing to fear, Wilbur, nothing to worry about. Maybe you'll live forever, who knows? And now go to sleep." For a while there was no sound. Then Wilbur's voice. "What are you doing up there, Charlotte?" "Oh, making something," she said. "Making something, as usual." "Is it something for me?" asked Wilbur. "No," said Charlotte. "It's something for me, for a change." "Tell me what it is," begged Wilbur. "I'll tell you in the morning," she said. "When the first light comes into the sky, and the sparrows stir, and the cows rattle their chains, when the rooster crows and the stars fade, when early cars whisper along the highway, you look up here, and I'll show you something. I'll show you my masterpiece." Before she finished the sentence, Wilbur was asleep. She could tell by the sound of his breathing that he was sleeping peacefully, deep in the straw. Miles away in the Arables' house the men sat around the kitchen table, eating a dish of canned peaches and talking over the events of the day. Upstairs Avery was already in bed and asleep. Mrs. Arable was tucking Fern into bed. "Did you have a good time at the fair?" she asked as she kissed her daughter. Fern nodded. "I had the best time I ever had anywhere or at any time in my whole life." "Well," said Mrs. Arable, "isn't that nice?" The next morning, when the first light came into the sky, and the sparrows stirred in the trees, when the cows rattled their chains, and the rooster crowed, and the early automobiles went whispering along the road, Wilbur woke and looked for Charlotte. He saw her up overhead in the corner near the back of his pen. She was very quiet. Her 8 legs were spread wide. She seemed to have shrunk during the night. Next to her, attached to the ceiling, Wilbur saw a curious object. It was a sort of sack or cocoon. It was peach-colored and looked as though it were made of cotton candy. "Are you awake, Charlotte?" he said softly. "Yes," came the answer. "What is that nifty little thing? Did you make it?" "I did indeed," replied Charlotte in a weak voice. "Is it a plaything?" "Plaything? I should say not. It is my egg sack, my magnum opus." "I don't know what a magnum opus is," said Wilbur. "It's Latin," replied Charlotte. "It means great work. This egg sack is my great work, the finest thing I have ever made." "What's inside it?" asked Wilbur. "Eggs? 514 of them," she replied. 514? said Wilbur. "You're kidding." "No, I'm not. I counted them. I got started counting, so I kept on, just to keep my mind occupied." "It's a perfectly beautiful egg sack," said Wilbur, feeling as happy as though he had constructed it himself. "Yes, it is pretty," replied Charlotte, patting the sack with her 2 front legs. "Anyway, I can guarantee it's strong. It's made out of the toughest material I have. It's also waterproof. The eggs are inside and will be warm and dry." "Charlotte," said Wilbur dreamily, "are you really going to have 514 children?" "If nothing happens, yes," she said. "Of course, they won't show up till next spring." Wilbur noticed that Charlotte's voice sounded sad. "What makes you so downhearted? I should think you'd be terribly happy about this." "Oh, don't pay any attention to me," said Charlotte. "I just don't have any pep any more, I guess. I feel sad because I won't ever see my children." "What do you mean you won't see your children? Of course you will. We'll all see them. It's going to be simply wonderful next spring in the barn cellar, with 514 baby spiders running around all over the place, and the geese will have a new set of goslings, and the sheep will have their new lambs." "Maybe," said Charlotte quietly. "However, I have a feeling I'm not going to see the results of last night's efforts. I don't feel good at all. I think I'm languishing, to tell you the truth." Wilbur didn't understand the word languish, and he hated to bother Charlotte by asking her to explain, but he was so worried he felt he had to ask. "What does languishing mean?" "It means I'm slowing up, feeling my age. I'm not young any more, Wilbur, and I don't want you to worry about me. Today's your big day. Look at my web. Doesn't it show up well with the dew on it?" Charlotte's web never looked more beautiful than it looked this morning. Each strand held dozens of bright drops of early morning dew. The light from the east struck it and made it all plain and clear. It was a perfect piece of designing and building. In another hour or two a steady stream of people would pass by, admiring it and reading it, looking at Wilbur and marveling at the miracle. As Charlotte was studying the web, a pair of whiskers and a sharp face appeared. Slowly Templeton dragged himself across the pen and threw himself down in a corner. "I'm back," he said in a husky voice. "What a night!" The rat was swollen to twice his normal size. His stomach was as big around as a jelly jar. "What a night!" he reported harshly. "What feasting and carousing! A real gorge! I must have eaten the remains of 30 lunches. Never have I seen such leavings, and everything well ripened and seasoned with the passage of time and the heat of the day. Oh, it was rich, my friends, rich! Mwah!" "You ought to be ashamed of yourself," said Charlotte in disgust. "It would serve you right if you had an acute attack of indigestion." "Don't worry about my stomach," snarled Templeton. "I can handle anything. And by the way, I've got bad news. As I came past that pig next door, the one that calls himself Uncle, I noticed a blue tag on the front of his pen. That means he has won first prize. I guess you're licked, Wilbur. You might as well relax. No one's going to hang any medal on you. Furthermore, I wouldn't be surprised if Zuckerman changes his mind about you. Wait till he gets hankering for some fresh pork and smoked ham and crisp bacon. He'll take the knife to you, my boy." "Be still, Templeton," said Charlotte. "You're too stuffed and bloated to know what you're saying. Don't pay any attention to him, Wilbur." Wilbur tried not to think about what the rat had just said. He decided to change the subject. "Templeton," said Wilbur, "if you weren't so dopey, you'd have noticed that Charlotte has made an egg sac. She's going to become a mother. For your information, there are 514 eggs in that peachy little sack." "Is this true?" asked the rat, eyeing the sack suspiciously. "Yes, it's true," sighed Charlotte. "Congratulations," murmured Templeton. "This has been a night." He closed his eyes, pulled some straw over himself, and dropped off into a deep sleep. Wilbur and Charlotte were glad to be rid of him for a while. Wow, what's going to happen to those eggs? And what's going to happen to Wilbur? We'll find out more next time on Charlotte's Web from the Oosterhout Free Library. Come on in and see us.